Hi, artist. It's great to see you back in the Arbor Virtual Art Room. Do you remember the torn words at the entranceway at our school? They were images that students chose of words. They chose one word that meant something to them, and they tore the word, and then they added imagery to develop the word into something unique for them. That word expressed what they were thinking and feeling. Art can be a way to comfort and heal feelings. Art can be a way to communicate with the world and share what we're thinking. Art can be a way to share thoughts about the world and to communicate our ideas. Art can be a way to affect or bring about change in the world. Some of you might have seen or heard the news this week. You might have seen many things happen that were surprising or upsetting. You might have seen adults doing things that were disrespectful to other people and to our democracy. What's a democracy? Democracy means government by the people, for the people. Our democracy isn't perfect, but it's a set of rules that we as people can work to improve. If you saw adults waving flags and symbols of hate and inequity, it might have brought up some very strong feelings for you. I know it did for me. One kid said he felt his world was out of whack. We can process these thoughts and feelings as we make art and we learn artistic techniques like tearing paper and choosing words that we want to illustrate. We'll also learn how word and image can work together. Instead of seeing offensive images full of hate and inequity, we can make our own images to heal our world. We'll be tearing letters today, and we'll be learning how to use tearing techniques better, because tearing letters can be challenging, but it's also a lot of fun. Next week, we'll be adding imagery to our torn words, and that will also be challenging and fun. If you remember our entranceway at school, those words were torn by 5th graders to express their feelings. You can choose a word that expresses the way you feel. You can choose a word that you think is important to share. You can choose a word that you think would be fun to illustrate. We're not choosing our name, unless you have a name like Joy that has shared meaning that everyone could understand. Choose a word in any language that you want. But do try to double check that you have the spelling correct. You can see the spelling on this wonderful artwork is wrong. And you can see that this artist had to figure out a quick fix. My mind went blank. I can't think of a word. Watch the video, and I'm going to show you a technique for figuring out what word you might want to use. How can I choose a word? Take a piece of paper and make 3 columns. One for how you feel, one for what you think is important, and one for everything else. In the heart column, how you feel, list the words that express how you feel. In the brain column, write the words that you think are important, that you want to share, and in everything else, write words that you might like to illustrate. Think about what words might be best to illustrate with images. When you're done, pick the word that means the most to you. You might want to think, when you're choosing a word, how you could incorporate imagery into the very letters of the word. Can you see how the image became letters in my word tree? We'll be working on this next week too. It might be helpful to you when you choose your word to think about ways that you're going to enrich it with images later on. Once you've picked out your word, pick out the colors that you want to do your word in and lay them out. Try to envision your first letter as it would look on the paper. Like my first letter is a D, so I'm using the straight edge of my paper as the edge of the D. Here's a review of tearing. We put our thumbs together and we tear in between our thumbs. One thumb pushes down, the other thumb pushes up. Making round shapes is really difficult. As you can see, I'm making one. But I'm going to give you an alternative way to make letters if you have trouble tearing shapes. You'll see that in a couple minutes. How will I get the empty space in my D? You guessed it, I'm going to fold it to tear a shape out. I fold it and I tear from the fold. And I'm not going to tear through any of the parts of the letter. I'm just tearing a shape out. Now I'm going to look at my letter and I noticed that the tall part was a little tall, so I made it shorter. And I'd love to see it have that little bit of articulation or design that the D has on the bottom. So I'm tearing a little upside down V shape out, and you'll see that it looks more like a D now. I'm choosing blue for the second letter because my word is democracy and our flag is red, white, and blue. I'm starting to tear a circle. Notice the way I rotate my paper with the thumb that's holding the paper while the other thumb pushes down and makes little tiny tears that go in a circle. Now I'm going to tear out the negative shape that's inside the E. Just like before, I fold it and I tear out a little bit. It worked. In order to glue, take a piece of scrap paper. Make sure you're clear on which the side of the letter is that's facing up, and then turn it over on the scrap paper and glue all around it. When you place it on your background piece of paper, be sure to press wherever you put the glue. Now I'm going to show you a technique to use if you have a problem ripping out whole letters. And that is to make a whole pile of little pieces of the color you want to use next. Once you have the pile, put the glue where you want your letter to be. Make it a little bit wider than your letter. I'm making an M and filling it in a little bit. Then start to build your letter out of little pieces. Be sure to press them hard into the glue that's already there. I'm going to be saving my word for next week because next week we're going to work on these again and we're going to enrich them by adding more imagery into our word. Remember to upload your word to your Google Classroom file. I would wait to put it on Padlet till after next week when you're all finished. And save it for next week when we'll work on it again. That's very important.